live.
Cool. On that note, welcome to this week's virtual cooking class. Today we are talking about food preservation. That's right, that's canning, drying, fermenting, freezing, and any other kind of methods that we're not maybe talking about today. But those are the four we're going to be talking about. So on that note, my name's Sydney.
I'm Hollis.
And we're joined by
Matt.
Okay, hold on one second. Okay, that was our own live video going. That was very awkward. I'm sorry, y'all. It should not happen again.
Carnival-worthy feedback going on here.
Okay. All right.
Cool. Okay. So Christ Verdes, we're going to be talking about some different ways to preserve food. So it's fall, not quite the 21st, but it is that time of year. You know, you're starting to harvest stuff. You too have too many zucchinis and way too many tomatoes. Running out of creative ways to use them while they're fresh. Looking to have that garden fresh vibe all winter long. Food preservation is where it's at. It's delicious, nutritious. If you already have the produce, it's cheaper, so that's cool too. Yeah. So it's good for you because of its often has less chemicals than you might get in the grocery store, which is dope. It can be less expensive if you already have all the ingredients at home, and it is a nice way to be able to feed yourself how you want to, so you don't have to rely on the, you know, goofy spaghetti sauce at the grocery store. When you have pasta feeds, you can have your own delicious tomato sauce with all the right spices and, you know, none of the allergen things. It's, you know, a good way to be able to feed yourself how you want to and feed your relatives the same, which is awesome.
Yeah. There's nothing like some garden fresh tomato sauce in the wintertime.
For sure.
Let me tell you. Tasty. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Read. So as you may remember from 30 seconds ago, the four ways we're talking about today are drying, freezing, canning, and fermenting. So we're going to demo a little bit of canning and a little bit of drying, but we'll quick touch on the freezing and fermenting. I kept forgetting the words, just so many F's. So freezing is handy because you can just kind of stick in the freezer, so it's a little bit less work. And it helps to maintain some of like the nutrition of the foods you're eating. So like freezing your veggies can like keep the skins on, keep some of like the good phytonutrient antioxidant stuff going on. But sometimes it does lose a little bit of the rigidity. So you might want to use it in like a soup or a stew or a smoothie and not like as a salad. So different uses, but still all tasty and delicious. So some recommended produce for freezing. Oh gosh, if I can read. Carrots, potatoes, peppers, green peas, corn, zucchini, squash, or onions. But you can try and freeze about anything and see how it goes. But the important part is you can either freeze it on like a cookie sheet and then stick that in the freezer, freeze it individually, and then put them in a container. Or you can blanch them, which we'll talk about later today. Get excited. And then that way you can kind of keep some bright color. And sometimes that helps maintain color texture too.
Yeah, freezing them on the cookie sheet keeps it from being like one big frozen mess, or not mess, but like a block when you're trying to, take it out of the freezer bag later. And yeah, I would definitely agree. I like freezing things, but I have to cook them in a certain way once they're thawed, because something about plants, so we're talking about the science behind food preservation. One sciencey thing is that when you freeze plants, the cell walls burst because of the water in the cell. And so often like things that you froze are less crisp when you thaw them, but that's okay. Like you can just so like if you did like herbs, one way you could do herbs is like in a ice cube tray and put oil or water in there, and then when you thaw it, those herbs are better to go like in a stir fry or in a soup or something rather than like fresh as a garnish. But you know,
So
really good.
Yeah. But so if you love zucchini bread, like we love zucchini bread, that's another great option for grating it up, sticking it in the freezer. Maybe, I don't know if you could do that with zoodles, but maybe that would be, you know, but zucchini freezes, long story short too.
Yeah, to bake with later. So if you got a really fat zucchini like this one, it's a good thing to do. But yeah,
it really is. So I think that kind of covers our freezing, but so then moving on to an equally exciting, but actually a little bit more activity based, we got fermenting. So fermenting is a big fancy word for saying when like the bacteria's on things. So like kind of the little small, can't see with your bare eye type critter organisms on produce, like, you know, an orange, like the kind of the stuff on the skin that maybe you can't see with your eye, but it's still there. It eats the sugars and makes like it kind of, it kind of like produces, it breaks it. It doesn't break it down, but it kind of just shifts the state. So then you can kind of control it. So some popular fermented foods might be like yogurt or kimchi or kombucha, sourdough, all those kind of things. And so it's a way that you can preserve food, because once it's started fermenting, it kind of keeps in like a steady state longer, especially if you stick it in the fridge, it'll last a really long time. But it's also good for your gut microbiome, which fun, weird but true, is that having a healthy gut helps to keep your immune system healthy. So if you're looking to stay strong, empowered, healthy this winter through this pandemic, would highly recommend eating some fermented foods. Really good for you. There's lots of cool ways you can do it. Lots of cool people doing it. If you ever, huge shout out. She's so cool. Linda Black Elk does awesome stuff. She does cool fermented things too. So check her stuff out if you have a chance. But
and we'll talk more about fermentation next week too. It's like one of my favorite things to do with food. So, and I know that Matt also ferments foods. Fermenting foods is great. It makes a lot of the nutrients more bioavailable for you to digest. So like it increases the nutritional content of your foods, which is awesome.
Yeah, especially with things like baked goods too. Like fermenting helps to kind of break it down so your body can process it and your stomach isn't sad.
Yeah,
which is awesome.
I'm pretty sure that all ancient original forms of bread were sourdoughs, because that was like, it was pulling yeast from the environment rather than like the yeast that we add now. And then the grains were fermented.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah, fermentation's awesome.
It is. You know, a little science in the kitchen, we can always get behind that.
Yeah.
But so those are the first two methods, but now we're moving on to some fun, exciting action steps. So we're gonna toss the mic to Matt to tell us a little bit more about drying. And I think we're making some jerky today.
Yeah.
So take it away, Matt.
All right. So hello, everybody. Today we are going to make some beef jerky. You can pretty much use any kind of like red meat. So if you have deer or buffalo, or if you just have beef from the store, you know, that's perfect. So this recipe today comes from Ball. And Ball is basically one of the leaders in canning. So they do a lot of canning equipment. So like the jars, the mason jars you see, there's a lot of them that are Ball brand. This is where this recipe comes from. And so there's different kind of drying methods you can do. If you have a oven that is able to go to lower temperatures, you can even dry using your oven. Or a lot of people just use dehydrators, which is what I have today. So I will show you that in a little bit. Then you can also do like the traditional method of like sun drying, and that's where bappa is made. You know, they cut it real thin, and then they're able to like put the sheets of meat out to dry. And then the wind and the sun ends up drying it that way. And so a lot of times, you know, people use vegetables like tomatoes to sun dry. So there's just different kinds of methods we can do. But today we're going to be using a and so if everybody will go to the recipe, that the ingredients we need for today are going to be a 3-pound lean beef. So today I think I have a flank. I think it's flank. Got it from Turtle Creek, so see how good it is. And then we're gonna use soy sauce. And my favorite kind of soy sauce is Kikkoman. Like I swear by this soy sauce. So a Japanese brand. Use whatever kind of soy sauce you have, or even some liquid aminos. You can do that too. And then we're gonna use Worcestershire sauce. And a lot of people have a hard time saying that, so some people say Worcestershire. But I believe it's Worcestershire sauce. But I could be wrong.
Can't say that.
And then just to have a little a sweetness to it, kind of like a teriyaki, we're gonna add some brown sugar to it as well. And as for the herb side of it, we're gonna use, I got garlic powder and I got onion powder today.
Yum.
Also with the same recipe, you can, if you want to, use liquid smoke. That gives it a lot more of that the smoky flavor. Some people like that, some people don't. So that's optional. You don't have to add that if you don't want to. Today I'm not going to add that. So we got all of our ingredients here. I am going to shift the camera so we can see everything.
So excited.
Need to get an overhead camera on that.
True.
Just so everybody knows, I have a really small house and a really small kitchen, so I don't have like one counter space. So.
All right, work what you got.
Still making the magic happen.
Okay, so today I'm just gonna cut the fat off here. I'm gonna grab a better knife real fast. So there's like this fat cap right here, if you guys can see it. So we don't want that, because when it dries, it's gonna like be really oily. We don't want any moisture in with our beef jerky. So I'm just cutting that off, and then I'll probably just give this to dogs later, maybe. So you're left with a really, lean piece of meat. That's what you're gonna want. It's okay to have a little bit of the marbling, and there's also gonna be some, pieces that you can't get out of there. So we'll leave it like that. And then you can either, the best way to do it too, as I found, is that you can partially freeze it, and then use a knife and just start cutting it in thin slices that way. But today I'm actually going to cheat a little bit and use this beef jerky cutter that we use at our program. So the way this works is that there's two sides. The sides at the bottom is a little bit thicker, and this side's a little bit thinner. So I'm going to go for the thinner just to help it dry faster. So what we're going to do is hold this down, and then this knife is going to go flat. It's going to go against the edges of this cutter or this box, and basically that's going to help us get our strips. So I don't know how the best way to move my camera is, so I am going to put it this way. Okay, so you basically want to hold it down and then just slice and go down.
So handy.
So it's basically just like a shallow box.
Yeah. And then when you're done, you'll get these kind of pieces right here, like this thick slice. You guys can see it better.
Wow. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And if you want to, you can cut it even smaller. You can cut it in half. I'm just gonna throw in here for now. I have a big measuring bowl here. I was gonna put everything in. So I'm gonna quickly cut through these. Position this again. So are there any questions while I'm doing this? So it's, you guys are just watching me.
Check. Okay, we have Franny is hype about the jerky. That's awesome.
Hi, Franny.
Yeah.
One of our fans right there.
Yes. Franny says, still good. I need a taste test. Would it still taste the same? I'm not sure what that was in reference to.
Maybe the
I
liquid.
didn't see it pop up.
I don't know if that's pertaining to liquid smoke, maybe.
Oh, maybe.
I'll keep the comments up now. Sorry, folks. Oh, Freddie says, where's the third sister? Oh, you're still there. Let us know what you were asking about, Franny, so we can answer your question.
Yeah.
About would something still taste the same? Oh.
Oh, I see. So dried or freezing foods, they should still taste the same, but if you're fermenting them, often it does give it kind of a different flavor and like a tasty flavor, but it is different. So like,
Oh, yeah.
I would say like if you make like kimchi, for example, like it's gonna taste like whatever kind of like sauce, like kind of thing you put in, and you like soak it in a brine first, so it kind of is gonna be a little bit more robust.
Yeah. So with fermenting, yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That freezing probably stays closer to the same taste, and then fermenting, changes the chemistry of the food a little bit more. So a lot of times like fermented foods, people call them like a little bit like funky because they have this like kind of more like tang to them. A lot of times you add stuff like ginger or garlic, hot peppers, onion, that kind of thing to kimchi. But if you just like straight fermented something like without the flavorings, I don't know how often I've done that. I think in my opinion, like it's like the flavor is almost enhanced. Like it's a little bit stronger. And especially like with sourdough, like for sourdough bread, like the sourdough bread is gonna have a little bit, like it's called sourdough because it tastes more sour. It has like a little bit of a tanginess to it. So I feel like a lot of fermented foods, they get this like kind of sour taste, tangy taste. But yeah, it just depends on which one you're talking about.
Yeah, but all delicious and nutritious.
That's kind of the fun with fermenting too, is you can kind of taste things as they go, and if it doesn't taste fermented enough to you, you can like let it keep going a little bit. Especially with like kimchi and things like that, you can kind of like do a daily taste test and be like, oh, I want to ferment that a little bit more. So it's up to you.
Yeah,
Dealer's choice.
Consumer's choice.
Yeah.
Great minds think alike.
Cool. Ooh, are you ready to do your sauce, Matt?
I am. So I have like a bigger piece left, but I'm gonna save that for later. So I have a pretty good amount to work with. So I'm gonna pull up my recipe again. Okay. And so I'm gonna add 3/4 cup of soy sauce.
Yum.
Measuring cup out. Okay. And usually I don't measure stuff out, so for this time I'm gonna.
Thanks, Matt. Appealing to my heart, you know.
So there's 1/2 cup, and then half that. So 3/4 cup of soy sauce. And then next we're gonna add the Worcestershire, which is a 1/4 cup.
Fun fact, Worcestershire sauce has oysters in it, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't know that until our roommate is vegan, does not eat animal or dairy products, and I added it to a dressing once, and then she couldn't have the dressing. I had to make another version. But I love it in like mustard dressings.
Now I'm adding the onion powder. This one, for the recipe, it says 1 teaspoon, so this one I'm gonna eyeball. Sorry, Sid.
Okay, I'm just heartbroken. It's fine.
Hey, at least he gave the measurement.
True. This is
better than me sometimes. I'm like, follow your heart.
Now I'm adding garlic, the garlic powder. And the recipe asks for fresh garlic cloves, but I think the garlic powder will do just fine.
Yeah, totally.
I would probably add in about 1 teaspoon of this.
Okay.
And then last one is going to be our brown sugar.
So for the studio audience, if you love the concept of drying, but maybe you're not a fan of beef jerky, the onion and garlic powder is another great example of how you can use some of your dried goods, because you could dry some onions if they're on sale at the grocery store, dry some garlic, get them real nice and dry, grind them up in like a food processor. I've heard people can use blenders, but it doesn't work quite as well, but use some to get it real fine, real dry, and then
use
you can
coffee grinder too. You just have to wipe it out before you make coffee again, but it gets things really like finely ground.
Okay, and this calls for 1/4 cup. So I'm not gonna pack it. I'm just gonna do a loose cup. So there you go. So that has everything in there now. Get the rest of the stuff out of the way, and then you can either use like a tongs or you can just use your hands. If you want to get a little bit down and dirty. I'm just using my hands for now. I'll get the napkins ready. Okay. So I like to use my hands just because I think it adds a little bit more of a different connection to like the food you're cooking with.
Yeah,
you get to taste the texture when you're eating the food, but now like when you're making it, like, you get to feel the food. It's kind of weird with meat. It's like really kind of like, I don't know, it's different. So just adds that little extra depth to your cooking. And so I'm just gonna mix it really good so everything's incorporated. And then normally I would put this in the fridge and let it marinate maybe overnight, or a minimum of like 2 to 4 hours, just so that all the spices and the sauces really like permeate through the meat. And then after that, I would do this next step what we're gonna do next. So I'm gonna wipe my hands, and then I will show you my dehydrator. It's a little bit fancy actually, so
Nice.
as long as it dries, and that's all we care about. So
Yeah, I bet you can make jerky okay in the oven, right? If you can get it low enough. Yeah.
yeah, so unfortunately my oven actually is a little bit runs really hot, so it usually burns everything. So mine's not the best one for that, but so I am gonna
We're loving the comments, Franny, by the way.
So here it is afterwards. After you fermented, or not fermented, marinated, you'll put in the stove, can't talk, the fridge.
Yeah.
And then most of that juice will be soaked up. So turn on the camera now so you guys can see the dehydrator.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
That's beautiful.
The fancy one. And actually just used it not too long ago. I bought some shiitake mushrooms and I just dried them. And so I think this one's a 10 rack one. Nice. So there's different racks you can put in there. You can take them out and then you place the meat on top of it. And then you kind of just add the temperature. And I think for meat, let me pull up my recipe again. For me, it says you want to put in a dehydrator at 145 degrees. So I think the lowest this one goes to is, let me see. The lowest this one goes to is 95 degrees. So this is really good to use for if you want to make fruit leather too. So or drying herbs.
So you would want it lower for fruit and herbs than for meat?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it for like the jerky side. My next step would just be like using these racks and placing them on there. I also like to like dry mine a little bit before I put them on there. Just to get rid of some of the moisture. Just to helps wrap up the drying process faster. So, that's on my end. I'm gonna let mine cook for dry for about 7 to 8 hours. And then I'll post a picture so everybody can see.
Sweet, yeah, can't wait to see how it turns out.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Do you have any other favorite dried things? Like if I leave this episode and just feel like a strong, I'm gonna dry so much food, do you have any top recommendations?
Top recommendations. That's a good question. I don't know. I only really use mine to dry meat. I really want to start drying fruit. Like strawberries and all the berries are still in season right now, so it'd be cool to start drying that. Other than that, I don't know what else I would dry. So yeah, I don't got too much for you.
That's okay. Yeah, someone the farmer's market yesterday was telling us about drying tomatoes and how good that was. So that they last a really long time once they're dried. I think you can dry them and put them in a jar in a dark place and they'll still be good, in the winter time, and put them on pastas and stuff. So that's something I've always wanted to do. I've never dried tomatoes, but
this year, man.
Yeah, maybe this year. Yeah.
Yum. Oh, I'm getting hungry talking about this.
All right, we had Sherry asked. Sherry said, "I'm gonna try this. If you wanted it hot, would you add peppers?"
For sure.
What kind of peppers would you add?
So I would actually just add any dried peppers. If you had cayenne, you could add a little more of that, or some crushed red pepper. We recently when we were in Spearfish, we had this really good, I don't know what kind of pepper it was, but it was like a spicy red pepper from Trish and Jeremy's house. I don't know what kind that was, but it was really good.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. So yeah, I would add that to your marinade, or you can also add that whenever you're placing your strips of meat on the drying rack. So you can sprinkle it on.
Oh.
So that's where I would also add the black pepper for mine. That's when I would do that step.
Oh, so when you actually put it on the racks, that's when you'd add like some more flavoring.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
I don't know if you can use an air fryer for this kind of thing. I haven't really delved into air fryers. Sorry, Franny asked that too.
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. I never even used the air fryer myself, so I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't either. I guess I was under the impression that was more for like cooking things that you're about to eat, but I wonder if you could use it in different ways that I'm just not aware of.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I don't know. I know air fryers have got really popular this past year or two.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you find out a good like food preservation method with air fryers, we would love to hear about it. That would be super cool.
Yeah. I also got a really good deer jerky recipe too, so hit me up if anyone wants that.
Yeah.
Come find that at the farmer's market on Wednesdays, you know.
I feel like that fish would be good too. Yeah. I'm gonna try that.
Or make some turkey or chicken jerky.
All right, cool.
Sweet. So I think then last but not least, we're going to talk about canning.
We're gonna talk about canning. Yeah.
And big disclosure, you should attend a virtual workshop or go to an in-person one that's COVID safe if that feels comfortable to you. But one of those two things would highly recommend before you can at home for a couple of reasons. But one of the biggest ones being you can give yourself botulism, which is a really nasty, unpleasant experience. So please don't do it. We care about y'all. Don't do it. So watch a workshop, get some training on it first. But we're going to give you a little overview here in case you're curious, like how it works, or if you know, like my auntie does it and I have no idea how it goes. So I want to learn more. And so like this is like a nice way to get an overview. But definitely check out. And if you're interested, reach out to my partner in crime, Hollis here, because
we'll have some canning workshops. We should have 2 canning workshops coming up in the next couple of months. So reach out. I think my email is on our website, but I can post it here too. So yeah. And yeah, we're not certified canning instructors. I've just been to workshops. So I'm just going to tell you how I've been told. And then but it is important to use a canning specific recipe. That's like the number one thing that I would say is that like you can't just like make tomato sauce, put it in a jar and can and like process it. Like you have to have the acidity right, or else that's when you would get botulism or something, is when the acidity level, because the acidity, like high acidity, keeps bad bacteria from growing basically. So yes.
There are a couple different kinds of canning. There's like the water bath method and pressure canning, and you kind of use them for different things. So maybe tomato sauce, you would use a water bath. But if you're canning like a blueberry jelly or something, well, blueberries
you can do
like maybe like
you can do jams and jellies in water bath too. It's
lower acidity things though.
Yeah. So there's like an acidity. There's charts that will show the acidity level of different foods, and it'll show you like foods on this side of this chart, and we can post this chart too. Foods on this side of this chart are safe to water bath can, and foods on this side are not, and you would have to pressure can them. So something that we've pressure canned as a program in the past has been a buffalo and rice soup. And that was done in a pressure canner, but that you would not be able to do in a water bath canner. So
cool.
Yes. The difference, I believe, being like the pressure and the temperature being maintained for a long period of time that you can't achieve with a water bath. So. All right. Yeah.
So you want to hop into it?
So we're gonna go over tomato sauce because that's kind of like a really good way to get into canning, like a very basic recipe or product. And there's a few different ways that you can approach it. And I feel like everybody has their different ways that they like to make tomato sauce. Like some people will roast the tomatoes, some people, there's different ways to do it. So we're going to talk about a couple different ways. If you have certain pieces of equipment, you can use them. If you don't, then there's other ways to do it. So the first way that we're gonna show is just, sorry, these flies are distracting me. So we're gonna take some tomatoes, we've already washed them, and first we're going to just core them and then just quarter or chunk them up and then just start them simmering on the stove.
Yeah.
Right? That was the first one? Yes.
I think so.
Yeah. And this one we will be using, this is the method that you would do for using a Foley food mill or some kind of food mill like this. So the first thing you would do is you would take your tomatoes, you chunk them up and you simmer them a little bit until they start to get soft. We're just going to do a couple of tomatoes at a time for each one of these methods to show you guys. I'm just gonna, oh, you guys can't see anything, huh? I'm just gonna core this tomato. I'm gonna cut off this piece of it, didn't really ripen, which happens sometimes. It's kind of a funky tomato, but.
This is a great way if you have some tomatoes that, you know, don't look as aesthetically pleasing, but you know they're still delicious. So like right now, Hollis cut up a Cherokee purple, yeah. And so great flavor, but the tomato itself looks a little like not as like photogenic, so you can retain the flavor and still use it even if it's like not the cutest tomato.
Yeah, and it's another good thing to do if you have like, if you have some tomato plants at home and some of them, some of the tomatoes got a little bit damaged and they're not going to stay good for a while, then like you can just cook them down and preserve them. So. And that's what these are. These are some damaged tomatoes, but that's okay.
Still got heart.
And so one of the differences between these methods, oh, I didn't realize there was water in here. Oh, is there? No.
Ew. Sorry, you know, miscommunications happen sometimes.
No, you're good.
But,
so when you do the food mill, you don't need to put the tomatoes in water. Sorry.
nah, you're good.
But first, the front one has water though, right? For blanching? Okay.
Yeah.
You just put them right in the pot, and there's enough like juices in there. The tomato juices will start to escape, and you know, it'll start getting a little saucy. So, yeah. And so one of the differences between these methods is that it kind of depends on whether you want to have skins and seeds in your sauce or not. So like for the one we're doing right now, the first one method with the food mill, once you run it through the food mill, it will take out the skins and the seeds. So it'll be like a really smooth sauce. And I'll just give a little overview on the three methods we're doing. So that's the first method. The second method we're gonna do, we're gonna blanch the tomatoes and then dunk them in ice water. And that's a really easy method to get the skins off. So if you just did that and then you chunked the rest of it and cooked it down, you wouldn't have skins, but you would have seeds. And then the third method is you can use a blender and you can just chunk up the tomatoes, throw them in the blender, pulse them, and then just cook that down. And so that would be keeping on the skin and the seeds. So, you know, different people prefer different things and it's totally up to you. It doesn't matter as far as like the canning process, whether there's skin and seeds in there. And so, but then when we were doing our own sauce the other day, and we kind of were doing a hybrid method where we were chunking up the tomatoes and then we were just kind of squeezing out the seeds and the watery part, and then blending that. So we were actually keeping the skin, but not the seeds, and we were just kind of doing that by hand. So if you just have a blender, but you don't want the seeds in it, you can still do it that way. And I think that also helps with the cooking down process because you're kind of taking out some of the extra liquid from the, where the seeds and all that liquid is in the middle. So yes. Let's see. I'll do one more tomato for this method.
Oh, so what's your preferred method?
I like keeping the skins, but not the seeds. That's my preferred method. But you know, I've also made some lazy tomato sauce and let the seeds in, and it's perfectly fine. Like it doesn't really change my enjoyment of the sauce later on. Yeah. What method do you use?
I do mine the lazy way.
Oh yeah.
So I keep the seeds and the skin in.
Yeah.
I basically cook it down, and then I use one of my favorite kitchen tools, an immersion blender.
Oh yeah.
So that's how I
Makes
break
it so much
it
easier.
down. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. If you guys were on last week, you would remember that we got a new stove recently, and we're not totally used to it. And it actually gets much hotter than our old one did, I think. So, all right, so we're gonna let those simmer down a little bit until they're cooked down a little bit and soft enough to run through the food mill. And so, and I'm just gonna remove a little ugly spot on the tomato, but that's fine. No big deal. So with the blanching method, I actually really enjoy doing this method because I think it's fun. But with the blanching method, we're just waiting for the water to boil. But once the water gets hot, you just throw your tomatoes in whole. And you can do like 5 or 6 tomatoes at a time, or you can do a bigger pot and do more or whatever. But you just throw the tomatoes in the water whole until for like 60 seconds or something, until you see the skin like pop and like it'll just split. And then that's when you can scoop it out with a slotted spoon and put it in the ice water. And then that like change in temperature makes the skin just like pull off really easy. So, and putting it in the ice water makes it easier to handle again, so you can chop it up. So kind of dual purpose, but yeah. Guess I can talk about the tools a little bit while we're waiting. Okay, so if you're getting into canning, you might have seen in the stores there's these like canning equipment kits that they sell, and you can definitely go ahead and buy one of those. They're not too expensive, I don't think. I think they run maybe up to $15 or something. But I would say that out of all, so they usually come with this tool, which is for pulling your jars out of hot water. It's got like grippy, like this stuff is kind of grippy, which helps it to not slip. This tool I'll demonstrate later, but it's basically for running around inside the jar to make sure that there's no air bubbles. And then it also has a little, like, what do you call it? Like a ruler on the other end. And it helps you to measure like the headspace of the jar. So that means like how far, oh yeah, then there's another version. Yeah, so Matt's got a different version. That's cool. I like that one better, honestly. But this one's kind of just like a skinny spatula. Then there is this magnetic little tool, and this helps you to like pick up the lids without touching them. Yeah, like that. And so that helps you to keep the lids sanitized without getting your hands all over them, which is nice. And like if you're trying to scoop them out of hot water too, because some people sanitize their lids in hot water but not boiling, because if you boiled the water it would melt the little rubber rim, which you really don't want to do. So you can sanitize them in hot water, or I've heard recently from someone who was a canning instructor that you can just wash them in soap and water, and that's fine. So yeah, that's what this one's for. And then this one, as far as I know, this is just for opening difficult jars, lids. I don't know any other use for this, but it's handy. because sometimes when you're canning, things get stuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was thinking about it earlier, and you know, you don't necessarily have to have all these fancy tools, but the one thing that I would have a really hard time canning without this tool. I don't know how you would like pull jars out of a water bath without this thing. Like, it would be very difficult because they're submerged. The water is boiling, and you know, even if you had like rubber tongs or something different that you could technically stick in the water and it would be okay. Like the jars, especially if you're doing quart jars, they're heavy. And this thing, it grips them really good. And since it's rubbery, like it doesn't slip and you're able to like pull them out and like set them down safely. Yeah, like that. Thank you for your demos. That was very helpful. So yeah, this thing, I would say if you're water bath canning, I would invest in one of these. These things, like, you know, you could use a regular spatula for this. And with the headspace, like it's good to have something to measure it, but you know, everybody kind of knows what an inch looks like. Yeah. So, and then, yeah, again, like this thing's nice too, but you can probably get away without it. But yeah, that's kind of the tool overview. Ooh, and our water's boiling now, so wonderful. All right. So now we're going to show the blanching method to get the skins off. So once your water is boiling, I just turn it down a little. It doesn't need to be like a rolling boil or anything. So you just want to gently just drop your tomatoes in. And you can do a couple at a time, which is nice. And then you just let them do their thing for about, I think it's supposed to take about 60 seconds. But yeah, you can just watch until the skin split. I'm gonna stir over here. Our other tomatoes are cooking down nicely. Getting very soft, saucy.
Oh. Sorry, we have a small kitchen, so I'm like still supporting. You're just like,
I'm not used to being in a solo show. I'm used to like supporting Sid's banter. So she's right here.
What are some of the comments?
I see Franny said she has an Instapot. I know Instapots can do a lot of things. I've heard you can make yogurt in Instapots, which is a fermented food.
Yeah, I heard that.
Which I've always wanted to try. I don't know what other fermented or preserved foods you can do in an Instapot. I don't think you can do pressure. I don't think that Instapots are sufficient for pressure canning. I think you can pressure cook in them, but pressure cookers. This is important. Pressure cookers and pressure canners are different things. Don't try to pressure can in a pressure cooker. So, yeah. Okay. Skins are not quite splitting. Although I might be able to demo the food mill part now. Should we try the food mill?
Sure.
Okay. So this is where I'm going to tag my good friend Sid in. So we're going to just do it into this bowl. So I have this food mill, and we're just going to do it in the bowl, and then once it's all processed through, we'll just put it back in the pot. So what you would do is you would cook the tomatoes down a little bit until they're soft and like liquidy, and then you put them through this to take out the skins and the seeds, and then you'd actually put all the tomatoes back into your pot to cook them down. So most tomato sauce recipes that I've seen suggest cooking down your sauce until it's reduced by about 1/2, because then it's just like a nice thickness for whatever pasta sauce, pizza sauce. I even make tomato soup out of ours. I literally just like add some cream or water to it and heat it up. And so, yeah, it's just a nice thickness to can efficiently and not use too many jars or whatever. So, yeah. So, you want to pour or do you want to hold?
Okay, I don't want to spill on you.
Licenses. All right, ready? All right. So it's still pretty chunky, but it's cooked down pretty good. And then you just do the handle around. Go for it. I think you can go backwards and forwards to like get it.
Kind of like you ever get like shaved meat at a grocery store or like a deli. It's kind of like the same thing, but like at the grocery store, there's nothing at the end, and here there's kind of the cheese grater bit. That's what it looks like at the end.
It's like rough on the inside. It's like a little cheese grater. It's interesting. So I think our blanched tomatoes have been in there long enough. So I'm just scooping them out. Putting them in the ice water. Nice. Cool. So, show y'all. Oh, that's really hot. I'm gonna move the computer instead.
Grab some.
Y'all are cooking out a little bit. Oh, there you go. Your audio is kind of choppy.
Hear me?
A little bit.
I'll just.
Mm.
I do not. What's in there? I don't. Yeah, but you could have. I don't know. Probably vegetable juice.
Then we can just talk about like all
Yeah. So we'll just start to make everything down. And then we will show you what to do with it.
Yeah. So Paul's kind of set up. So if you sit down, you might be careful. Thicker, saucy goodness, consistency of sauce, or like thicker consistency. But down to here. Maybe just I remember, but about things. So how do you go about like making sure your jar seem like that looks like?
You're going to do the actual can process. You're gonna want to sanitize your jars. And so, can you guys hear us?
I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Yeah, before it was really choppy.
All I did was pull the tomatoes and chop them up and put them back. In the bowl. And they would keep cooking down. So when you actually go to the processing, the canning part, you're going to sanitize your jars and your lids and the rings too. So what you do, and I'm going to say because it takes a lot of water and a lot of energy to heat up a lot of water. I'll just show you them. So what you would do is you would take a pot on, like this one, some kind of larger pot. It doesn't have to be a canning specific pot, but they do make them. So this is a canning specific pot. And what you want is you want either a rack like this. And so when this would go down into the pot, it would keep the jars above sitting right on the bottom. So what you want is the jars to be a little bit above the bottom so that the hot water can go all the way around them. And so you can either use a rack like this, or you can use a towel. So if you don't have a rack, if you don't have a canning specific pot and you don't have a rack, you can just use a big soup pot or stock pot, and you can put a towel in the bottom. And that's how I've canned things, and it works just fine. It just lets the, it just lets the water go all the way around them.
Yeah.
Can people
Like
hear
a
me
hand
now?
towel, right? Like a hand towel, right?
Yeah. So I would just use something like this, and I would literally just lay it in the bottom of the pot and just make sure that it's underneath all of the jars.
Yeah.
So we're gonna use this rack because we've got it. So when you're sanitizing the jars, you're gonna want to fill this pot up with water, enough water so that the jars can be completely submerged and with water inside of them. And you want it to be boiling. And so you would bring the water to a boil. You would take all of your jars, you put them on the rack, and you'd lower them in, and you kind of tilt them to make sure that the water goes inside of them. And so as long as they're completely filled and submerged. And if you don't have enough water in there, an easy way to add more boiling water is to just take like an electric kettle, or like a kettle on your stove, and heat up some water really fast that way and just pour more in like that, rather than adding cold water to your boiling water. So that's how you could sanitize your jars. And then that's also handy because you put your jars in there, and then you pull them out when your sauce is ready. So you want to sanitize your jars right before you're ready to actually put your sauce in the jars. And you want your sauce to also be hot when you're doing this. So you take your hot sanitized jars out of the pot, and then this sauce isn't hot right now. We're gonna heat it back up when we actually process it. But then you can actually use, that's what it was. It was the funnel. Okay. So these kits, I knew there was something missing. These kits also come with like a canning funnel. So it's like a funnel with a wider opening at the bottom that fits in jars. So you put that on there and then just pour in your sauce. And normally you'd be using a ladle and you'd be ladling it right out of the pot, you know, because it would be cooking down when you're doing this. So fill it up and looks good. So you're gonna want to leave some headspace, and headspace just means the room at the top of the jar above where the sauce level goes to. You fill it up and you would add to each jar, and this is very important, to each jar, and you can add this to the jars before you pour in the sauce. That's normally what I would do. I would take all my jars, line them up, put in lemon juice. For quarts, it's 2 tablespoons of lemon juice per quart, or 1 tablespoon of lemon juice per pint. And then you can also add some salt. So you can do a teaspoon of salt per quart. And then some people add a little bit of sugar too to offset the acidity. So you can do 1 teaspoon of sugar per quart. And so you want to make sure you add the lemon juice, especially because this makes sure that your sauce is at the right acidity to be processed safely in a water bath. So then imagine we've added those to this. I'm not going to do it right now because we still want to cook this sauce down a little bit more. But so this would be sauce, lemon juice, and salt, and sugar if you wanted to. And then I would take my handy dandy tool. I would run it around the edge and make sure there's no air bubbles around the edge. And then I can measure my headspace with the other end. So I have about 1 inch of headspace, which is what you want. And then then you take a little wet paper towel and you just run it around the rim. So you don't want anything on the rim that might interfere with the sealing, with the lid sealing. Because the lid has a little rubber rim around it, and when you're processing it, that like melts, and that's what seals your jar up really good. So you put that, you wipe the rim off, and then you take your new, you have to use a new lid every time you can. You can't use one that's been melted before. So I'm pretty sure this one's been used before. So I would not use this, I would buy new lids. But you take your lid, yes. So they come in, you can get sets of lids and rims together, or you can buy lids separately, because the rims, if they're still in good shape, you can reuse the rims. But the lids you can't, because like I said, they have this rubber seal and it melts. And once it's been melted and used once to seal a jar, then you can't reuse it. It's not gonna seal another jar. So that's really important. So I would have sanitized these with soapy water and then rinse them off, let them dry. And then I would have them laying out, and I'd probably use my little metal tool, or my little magnet tool, I mean. Lift it up, place it on there. There you go. And then you put on your lid. And most canning recipes, they say finger tight, which just means, you know, you'd screw it down and then you just tighten it, like hand tighten it. You don't want to crank it down. It's going to be really hard to get off if you crank it down. It's just, you know, it feels like it's closed. That's good. And then, yeah, once all your jars are prepared, you place them in your pot. You want to have the water at least 1 inch above the jars. So there has to be at least 1 inch of water covering. And like I said earlier, you can boil extra water in a kettle and pour it in there. And then you have to process it. I think the base time for tomato sauce is 40 minutes. And then there's an altitude chart that tells you, depending on what altitude you're at, you have to add time. And so for here, I believe tomato sauce, you'd add 5 minutes, so 45 minutes. And that just means put all your jars in there, get the water back to a rolling boil, so like a really hard boil where, you know, the water's bubbling and everything and it's moving around in there, and then set your timer for 45 minutes. Yeah, this has been an adventure, y'all. Yeah.
Do you check
So
water during the process at all, or as long as you have over 1 inch?
I don't think you have to add water. As long as there's an inch in there, and like I would normally put a lid on it, you know, that fits the pot. So you probably want to have a lid that fits that pot, and then put the lid on it and set your timer. And then when it's done, you use this tool to pull the jars out. And then you want to have a place prepared. You don't want to set them right on the counter. You'd want to, oh, hey Sheena, put them on, like, I usually just like lay out a towel and put them on that. And then you don't want to move them for at least 12 hours because you might disturb like the sealing process or the setting process of the lid. So you want to prepare a little area that's not going to be disturbed, pull them out, put them on the towel, and then you'll start hearing the lids pop. And that's the noise of them sealing. It's like a little pop, pop, pop. And then that's how you know they sealed, and you'll see it, like the lids will be like, I don't know how you describe it, like down a little bit. They won't have that little pop in the middle, like pop up. They'll be, yeah. And then, just leave them. So if you did it, you know, in the evening, leave them till the next morning before you put them away. And some people say to pull off the rings before you put them away. You only need the lid. I mean, the lid's sealed. It's not going to come off without the ring on there. So that is a basic canning overview.
The process is long, right?
What?
How long is the actual process? You just say from start to finish?
It takes some time.
Definitely.
I wouldn't do it on a weekday evening. I would give yourself, it's more fun with friends, you know. So. It's just like you hang out, you do it together. And so I don't know, start to finish from making the sauce in the first place. It depends on how long your sauce takes to cook down. Like we'll sometimes cook our sauce down overnight. And so it just kind of depends on how long that takes. So that's why we did ours in two phases this week. We cooked all our tomatoes down the other day, and then we'll bring them back up to a boil and process them this weekend, I think. So they're in the fridge right now. But yeah.
Cool.
What did you say?
How long is it good for?
Oh, once something's processed, I think that people usually say to use it within a year. I think that's kind of like the you know, what's advised. I've definitely eaten sauce after that, but I wouldn't like say keep things for years and years and years or anything. And what I remember hearing when I did take a workshop on this was like to, you know, when you're opening something that's been canned, to use your senses. Like look at it, see, like, does it look the same as when I processed it? It should look about the same. Like it shouldn't have changed color. Like as far as I'm aware, it shouldn't have changed color or anything. So like look at it, make sure it looks okay, smell it, make sure it smells okay, you know, and just make sure that it looks like it's sealed correctly. As long as the lid popped, it should be okay. You know, just make sure it looks right. And label it with a date that you canned it on so that you know it's not from 5 years ago or something. So that's always a good thing to do. And yeah. Anything else?
I don't think so. I think that was a studio audience question. So.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Was, yeah. So.
Oh, cool.
If you have any more questions, definitely hit us up.
So like, you can can and eat tomorrow if you want, or does it have to set? Yeah, after 12 hours, it's like good to go. But I mean, for me, normally like things that I can, it's like an investment in the future personally. Like it's like, you know, if I wanted to eat tomato sauce tomorrow and I had some tomato sauce that I was canning today, like I'd probably just like save some back and not can that sauce, and then just eat it tomorrow, you know. If I'm gonna go through the effort of canning something, then I'm gonna probably save it until I like can't have that thing anymore, or like until I don't have time to make tomato sauce or something like that. But that's just me, you know. You could totally eat it the next day if you just want to do this for fun. Or if you like realize the next day you didn't have something to make for dinner, like totally.
Yeah, they make great gifts.
Yeah, they do make great gifts. Yeah, things like jams, jellies, jalapeno jelly, jalapeno relish, apple pie filling is really nice because you can literally just make a crust, dump in the filling, and bake it, and it's like so easy. At that point in time. And yeah, canning's fun. Yes, the effort saved forever. Yeah, it's definitely an investment in time, but it's fun to do. And it's definitely like, for me, like canning tomato sauce in the summer is so worth being able to eat something that just tastes garden fresh in January, you know?
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, if it spices better after setting for weeks. I don't think that the flavor is really supposed to change. I think flavor development over time is more of like a fermentation thing. A canning thing is more like keep it how it is when you canned it. That's my perception of them, though. I'm not like a master in any of this, though. I just do it for fun. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for your insights, Hollis and Matt. That was fun to learn and listen from. And it gets me excited for some food preservation, you know? Like nothing's going to waste in our houses.
For
But
sure.
if you are really intrigued by this fermentation business we've been chatting about, make sure to tune in next week as we'll be seeing all about fermentation, talking a little bit more about it, making some delicious stuff. Yeah, so if you want to try cooking it with us and you want to do like something like a sourdough pancake or something, you could start your own sourdough starter now, but otherwise you can tune in and hear how it goes next week and then start your own fermentation projects from there. So, but thank you for joining though. And
thanks for all the engagement, y'all. It's been really fun. So it's an exciting topic.
It really is.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us too, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
I'll send a picture of the jerky whenever it's done.
Yeah,
Please
post a picture on here. And we will put the survey link in the comments.
Yeah, so make sure to keep your eyes peeled.
Yes.
But
and my contact information if you want to attend a canning workshop, virtually or in person. I think we'll see.
Yep.
Yeah, it goes. But sweet. Until next time, thanks for joining us, y'all. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Al.
Doksha.